We rolled up to the bungalow right at midnight. The porch light was out, but the front door hung ajar. That gap would tell me everything before we even crossed the threshold. Drew and I hit the doorway with our guns up, voices low and hard. "Police," I called. "Show yourself," no reply. Only the hollow echo of our own boots. We shouted for Marie, the homeowner, but the silence swallowed her name. We swept the ground floor quick. Kitchen, living room, hallway. No sign of forced entry. No sign of struggle. Just the impression of someone having left in a hurry. A floorboard creaked upstairs. I motioned for Drew to cover the landing while I climbed. Each door was shut. I couldn't tell which room the sound had come from. I told Drew to check the left side and took the right. I turned a knob, kicked the door, and raised my service weapon. Darkness filled the room. Breathing, slow and wet, came from beside the closet. A sliver of eyelid showed where the closet door sat half open. I told her it was okay. "Marie, if that's you, come out." The breathing stopped. Then Drew shouted from the hall. I found her. My stomach dropped. I swept the room again, every shadow now a threat. I stepped toward the closet and shouted for Drew to come in with me. He clicked on the light. The closet yawned wide. A woman cowered inside, hair matted, hands wrapped around a kitchen knife. We leveled our pistols. She dropped the blade. We cuffed her. She muttered about someone else. We brought her downtown. Later that night, I sat in the locker room and tried to unglue my brain from the image of that eye peeking through cotton-stained wood. A week passed before I got the call to go back out to the scene. The DA wanted me to ID property that had been recovered. When I walked into the house again, the living room smelled different. Something metallic on the mantel where Marie's wedding photo used to sit. There was a second photograph. It wasn't Marie. It was the woman we'd arrested, but in the photo, she smiled next to a man in uniform. The man wore my badge number. My hands went cold. As a highway patrol officer for 7 years, I thought I'd seen my share of late-night madness. But one shift changed how I looked at every car parked on the side of the road. It was just past 3 a.m. I pulled into a rest stop off the interstate, the kind with a closed diner and a single row of vending machines glowing in the dark. There were 3 cars sitting in the lot, lined up side by side. What bothered me right away, no drivers inside, no movement, no lights. I parked where I could see them all and radioed my location. I got out, hand brushing my holster. I tapped on the glass of the first car. Empty. Checked the second. Same. Third car? Doors locked, but the driver's seatbelt was still buckled as if someone had gotten out in a rush. I circled back toward the diner windows, cupped my hands, and peered inside. Nothing but dusty booths and overturned chairs. When I turned around, a voice startled me. "Officer, can you help me?" A man in his 20s stumbled out from behind the vending machines. He was pale, jittery, kept looking over my shoulder like he expected someone to be following him. He said his car had broken down. Begged me to look under the hood. I told him to call a tow. He insisted, practically begged, so I followed him to the second car. He popped the hood. I leaned in. The hairs on the back of my neck rose when I realized he wasn't looking at the engine. He was looking past me. Before I could react, I caught movement. Another man stepped out from between the parked cars, holding a length of heavy chain in his hands. I drew my weapon instantly and ordered him to drop it. The first guy froze, then lifted his own hands slowly. Both of them went down easy once they saw my gun trained on them. I cuffed the one with the chain, shoved him in the back of my cruiser, then secured the second. Backup arrived 10 minutes later. We searched the lot and found what they'd been preparing. Behind the diner, tucked into the tree line, there was a shallow pit. Inside were bloody plastic tarps, duct tape, and a shovel stuck upright in the dirt. It wasn't just a rest stop. It was a staging ground. The scariest part? Those 3 empty cars in the lot weren't theirs. Dispatch later confirmed each vehicle had been reported stolen earlier that night. Whoever they were waiting for, I was lucky it turned out to be me with a badge and a gun. I still don't pull into abandoned rest stops without backup anymore. I was still a rookie when this call came in. Dispatch flagged a hang-up 911 call from a farmhouse on the edge of my zone. Middle of the night, dead quiet roads. When I got there, the place looked abandoned. No lights, no cars in the drive, shutters half broken. I walked the perimeter, checked the windows. Everything locked, no movement inside. I radioed back. House seemed empty. And I left it at that. Next night, nearly the same hour, dispatch again. Same address. Another 911 call. This time the operator caught something, faint sobbing before the line cut. So I went back, drove the same gravel road, pulled into the same weed-choked driveway. Only difference, the front door was cracked open an inch. I pressed my hand against it, keeping it from moving while I knocked. No answer. I told dispatch I was going in, gun out, flashlight in the other hand. The interior was cold, smelled of mildew. Stairs straight ahead, kitchen to the right, and one closed door by the stairwell. Behind that door, a faint electronic sound, a steady tone. I whispered into my radio for backup, then eased the basement door open, creaked loud enough to make me wince. The sound grew sharper, definitely a phone off the hook. I went down step by step, beam cutting across cracked cement walls. In the far corner sat a landline, the old kind with a bulky receiver. It was off the hook, blaring dial tone through its speaker. I placed it back gently. The tone died, and then another sound started. Soft, muffled, like someone trying not to laugh. I swung my light. A man stood across the basement, half his face hidden in the shadows. His hand covered his mouth, shoulders twitching like he was choking back hysterics. The other hand held a revolver. He lifted it toward his own head. I shouted for him to drop it. He hesitated, finger tight on the trigger. I didn't wait. I fired twice into his arm. The revolver clattered onto the floor. He screamed, dropped to his knees. I cuffed him one-handed while calling for medical. Backup arrived as I dragged him up the stairs. He was still muttering between sobs and laughter. What stuck with me wasn't shooting him, or the blood on my uniform. It was the thought of how close I'd come to watching a man's brains paint the basement wall. My partner and I were dispatched on what sounded like a routine welfare check. An ex-boyfriend had called, worried because his former girlfriend had sent him disturbing texts, saying she couldn't live without him, and that she was done. When we arrived at her small single-story house, just after 1 a.m., the curtains were drawn and not a single light was on inside. We knocked, then pounded on the door, but got no response. The ex gave us her number, so we tried calling. She answered briefly, only to hang up. From inside, we could hear the faint vibration of her phone echoing through the living room window. We warned her we would force entry if she didn't respond. At first, there was only a slurred murmur, then the click of a deadbolt. The door creaked open, and she stood there, naked, dripping wet as if she had just stepped out of water. Her skin was pale, her body swaying, and her arms and hands were cut open, blood running down to her fingertips. We rushed her to a chair while my partner called for EMS. I swept the house with my flashlight since none of the lights worked. In the bathroom, a sickening scene revealed itself. Candles burned low, their wax puddled on the tiles, while scripture verses were smeared across the walls in blood. In the tub sat water, so dark it looked black, carrying the heavy stench of copper. She must have been sitting in that bath for hours, bleeding into it until it turned into thick, dark water. The fact she was still alive seemed impossible. As medics arrived and wheeled her out, we finished a safety sweep of the house. That's when my flashlight landed on something etched into the bathroom mirror, scrawled through streaks of blood. The words read, "I'm not alone." Before I transferred out of the county, I worked patrol in a city with crime stacked on every corner. Break-ins, assaults, robberies, you name it, we saw it. But there's one call that still creeps into my dreams. Locals all knew about the Holloway estate, a crumbling, abandoned mansion that sat overlooking the river. Boarded up since the 70s, yet kids still dared each other to sneak inside. Dispatch sent me there after a neighbor reported flashlights moving through the windows. I parked, scanned the property, and saw a dim glow flickering from an upstairs room. I requested backup, then found a ground floor window smashed open. I climbed through into what had once been a grand living room, now just rubble and dust. Floorboards creaked above me. I called out, announcing police presence. No answer. So I climbed the staircase, each step groaning loud enough to betray me. In the hallway, I heard something fall inside a room. I drew my gun, heart racing. The room was small, cluttered, with a sliding closet door half open. I shouted a final warning before yanking it wide. Empty. Then I caught sight of movement through the window glass, a figure standing outside on the balcony. I pushed through the next door, stepping onto the deck. But the figure was gone, and then I noticed more. Through the fog glass of 3 separate windows, I could see outlines, tall, motionless, each body pressed close as if staring inward. They stood there, silent, watching me. Then, in an instant, they vanished. Backup arrived minutes later. Together, we swept the whole mansion, every floor, every room. Nothing. As we were finishing, one of the other officers froze in place. In a ground floor window, something shifted, a pale oval, lowering slowly out of sight. We rushed outside, searched the property, the tree line, even the riverbank. Never found a soul. What I can't forget is the sight of 3 silhouettes, all pressed to their own window, staring in at me with no expression, no sound. Just watching. Music.